Thank you guys for joining us for another episode of NFL Free Agency Frenzy Day 5, presented by First Star Logistics. I'm Malik Wright, the host, joined my co-host. We've got Daniel Almeida, and we've got some stuff to discuss. We want to first and foremost, before we jump into everything, ask you guys to give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live from the First Star Logistics studio. Remember, every single time we are live or every single content that we upload is also simulcasted on the First Star Media Group's YouTube channel. So make sure you subscribe over there as well and turn on the post notifications button so you guys don't miss when Lap goes live, Goodberry goes live, or myself. That being said, there were some moves made today. There were some moves made today, and there's still some moves to still come down the pipeline. This has been a crazy week. Started to get a little slow in the mid part of the week, but it picked back up. And I think how I want to start off today's show is talking about the retirement of Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald is truly one of the best defensive players I have ever witnessed, that we've ever had the opportunity, the privilege to watch his game, cover his game. And I got to be honest with you, this caught me by a little bit of surprise because you felt like even though he won the Super Bowl, even though he has a multiple-time NFL Defensive Player of the Year, multiple All-Pros, it felt like the guy is walking away from the game with much more meat on the plate. I don't know. That's just me. I feel like that's a guy that can still play at the highest level. So when you heard the news that he was retiring per himself, it was a little bit of a shock. But I'm certainly the Rams are grateful for what he brought to them. I'm sure they're even more grateful that they have more cap to spend because we both know how the Rams were in terms of the cap situation. So, Daniel, what are your thoughts on the retirement of Aaron Donald and how this changes the face of the Rams?
Yeah, so first off, congrats to him. I'm always a huge fan of whenever a player is able to, announce a retirement or announce something on their own first off, right? He went off on his own terms, which is, you got to be happy for the man, right? And yes, there's definitely more meat on the bone for Aaron Donald. And there is no doubt that he steps in this year and could be the best defensive lineman in the entire NFL. But when you look at his career, you look at what he's accomplished, a lot of times is the question of, when do you walk away? When is enough enough? And he's walking away when he's at his highest, and props to him, right? Because I watched a video today and it was, of him versus the Cincinnati Bengals in the Super Bowl. And just the pride that Sean McVay had, the play before his sacking Joe Burrow, Sean McVay walked up to him, said, this is the moment. This is the moment you waited for. And just to see, he walked up to him and said, hey, Aaron, you're going to make this play. In the headset, Sean said, Aaron's going to make this play. What did Aaron go out and do? He went out and made the play. So it's almost like something you write out of a movie, right? A kid from, the University of Pittsburgh isn't the most highly touted prospect, wasn't a top 10 pick, wasn't the best defensive player in the class that went to Jadeveon Clowney. And Aaron Donald, defied the odds, undersized defensive lineman, defied the odds. So you've got to be happy for him. And how it leaves, the Los Angeles Rams, they still got a lot of holes to fill. And it looks like they're going for one last, Super Bowl push with Sean McVay. I think that's why they went out and signed a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo versus signing a younger guy, because they still feel like they're in the thick of things. They still feel like that they can win a Super Bowl. I don't know if their roster really is built to win a Super Bowl right now. I don't think their roster is better than the 49ers. I don't think their roster is better than the Eagles. I don't think their roster can compete with the AFC teams. But you got to trust Sean McVay, and it obviously clears a lot of money for them. So Aaron Donald, congrats to him. I think he's for sure a top 3 defensive lineman of all time in the NFL, and good for him. So we'll see where the Rams want to go with their future.
Well, let's keep it on the Jimmy Garoppolo thing. Jimmy Garoppolo signs with the LA Rams, and I think this is a good spot for him. I think that if anybody can fix Jimmy Garoppolo or can get the most out of Jimmy Garoppolo, it's going to be him. Now, we know Matt Stafford is still in the fold, obviously, and is expected to be the starter and come back and the whole 9 yards. But I could see a situation, and if Matt Stafford was able to miss any time, I definitely think Jimmy Garoppolo will be able to step in and get the most out of this roster. I don't think Jimmy could have landed in a better spot. What are your thoughts on that?
No, not at all. Jimmy Garoppolo this is the best spot for him because, we were talking about this. Jimmy Garoppolo is a better quarterback right now than the likes of Kenny Pickett, than the likes of Sam Howell, than these younger guys that are, being traded away. And that doesn't mean he has the most potential, but it clearly shows where the Rams want to go with this. The Rams are looking to win a Super Bowl. They're looking to be contenders. And if Matthew Stafford were to go down with an injury, I still believe Jimmy Garoppolo can be a guy that can lead him to multiple wins in the playoffs. Jimmy Garoppolo's shown it. And he's got weapons like Cooper Kupp, Kyron Williams, Puka Nacua. He's got, a couple new tight ends in Colby Parkinson, still got Tyler Higbee. So Jimmy Garoppolo, yes, this is the best possible situation for him because he's got weapons around him. And it just shows, the state of the NFL where you got two different types of teams. One, a team that is rebuilding and throwing the money at every single play in free agency, like the Tennessee Titans with a quarterback like Will Levis. Or you got a team that's got a roster that can somewhat compete like, the Seattle Seahawks or like the Los Angeles Rams. So Jimmy Garoppolo, yes, I still believe he is a top 32 quarterback in the NFL. I still believe he can be, a team starting caliber quarterback. And for him to be a backup, we've seen Matthew Stafford had a lot of injury concerns, whether it's his elbow, whether, his concussions. Very smart move by the Los Angeles Rams. I don't think they're paying him a lot, so good for them if they feel like they can make this push.
Yeah, man, I like the move for Jimmy Garoppolo as well. You can't say it's a move of the future, but this fits the mold of what the Rams have been under Sean McVay. I don't know if Sean McVay is too interested in building with a younger quarterback, but let's say Matt Stafford does play this last year out and says, hey, you know what, at the end of the year, I'm done. Then you have Jimmy Garoppolo slotted right in that spot. What was it, a 2-year deal?
I think it was a one. Let me check.
1-year deal that's probably going to turn into a 2-year deal at some point because I just don't expect. I think that this is a fit like a glove, honestly speaking. I think that this is a perfect situation. He could have landed in a better spot. And all in all, you got to be happy for him. Let's talk about the next thing. And I got to smile before I talk about it because I was ridiculed on this channel talking to Steelers fans about Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett gets traded for a bag of chips to the Philadelphia Eagles. Not actually for a bag of chips. It was a 3rd and a 5th round pick, all because he just was scared of a little competition with Russell Wilson. Words I never thought I'd be hearing. But what are your thoughts on Kenny Pickett being traded from the Pittsburgh Steelers to the Philadelphia Eagles? The plus side is the Steelers did do him a favor. They kept him in his home state so his family could come and still watch him be the backup. So they did him a favor, right? He still is in PA the whole 9 yards. But what are your thoughts though?
Yeah, I think it was nice of the Steelers, right? He grew up an Eagles fan. He, stays in the same area. So good for them for trading him to a team that, he's definitely fond of other than other teams in the NFL. But when you look at this, the Steelers are pretty much, they're riding this wave of being an above average team, of being, trusting their culture, of trusting, what Mike Tomlin's built. That's what they're rolling with, because you look at the roster, it is not a Super Bowl caliber roster. It is a roster that can get into the playoffs. It is a gritty roster. And it seems like they're just going to continue to hover on that, that line of being right there, 9 wins, 10 wins, scrape into the playoffs and maybe get one playoff win. You look at their defense, it's dominant, right? When you got TJ Watt, you got Alex Highsmith. I really like them getting Dante Jackson at the other cornerback position. You got the young Joey Porter, Minka Fitzpatrick still there. They added Patrick Queen. Then on the offense side of the ball, your wide receivers, you got George Pickens, and that's pretty much it, Malik. You got Denzel Mims on the roster, Calvin Austin. So Russell Wilson is a fine quarterback. Russell Wilson, I think, can see success. But I'm going to be honest. I'm not. Yes, get rid of Kenny Pickett. I get it. But it also goes to show, they made a mistake drafting him. They did. They felt they felt pressured into getting a franchise quarterback. They took him in the first round and they traded him within 2 years. And at this moment, yes, it's a smart move, Malik, but it still shows you made a major mistake wasting a first-round pick, because that's what it was. Kenny Pickett was a waste of a first-round pick because he spent 2 years there and he's not there anymore. So you look at this front office. I've got some questions about what they're doing because, in my opinion, yes, Russell Wilson keeps them there. He keeps them, but would I rather take a chance on a guy like Justin Fields? I would. If I'm the Steelers, if I'm looking to build a a franchise quarterback, if I'm willing to, build something outside of just being mediocre, outside of just being average, I'm going to go after a guy like Justin Fields. Maybe they don't believe he can be that guy, but listen, they're not better than the Ravens. They're not better than the Bengals. And I really struggle to see how this team, how this roster can win more than one playoff game. So I've got some questions about Omar Khan and the GM, about what their future plans are, because it seems like they're just going like this.
I guess the next thing we can discuss is Keenan Allen traded to the Chicago Bears. Don't know how I feel about the move necessarily, because I know Keenan was so loyal to the Chargers. What I will say is Caleb Williams, with all the baggage that he has, right? I think that this is a good spot for him. He's going to a situation where his receivers are going to be Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. Cole Kmet at the tight end position. This is a good spot for him, man.
Yeah.
This is a good spot for him. And when I look at it, I say, Keenan Allen, he's one of the most sure-handed guys in the league. He's everybody who plays in the National Football League. He's in their top 5 receivers in the league. But for whatever reason, he doesn't get the national attention, the love that he should get from, I guess, the media members.
Yeah.
But Keenan Allen is just consistent. He's the model of consistent. And I think that pairing him up with Caleb Williams, with DJ Moore in Chicago is a great fit. What are your thoughts on Keenan Allen being now being a Chicago Bear?
I've got mixed feelings, and the reason why. So the move in itself, in a vacuum, Malik, yes, Keenan Allen can give them at least 2 years of very good wide receiver production. He had 250 yards in a game this year, Malik. 250 yards for a wide receiver who ran a 4.6 in the 40. Mm-hmm. So it's a great move, yes. But when you look at what else they've got, Malik, they've got like 5 draft picks this year. And it looks like, they're going out making big splashes. You got DeAndre Swift. Okay, that's a big splash. You went out, you added to the defense line. You got Montez Sweat. Okay, that's a big splash. Jalen Johnson, you re-signed him. Their roster looks good, and they are trying to, correct the mistake they did with Justin Fields. They didn't surround Justin Fields with enough talent. So you're going out and you're surrounding Caleb Williams, presuming that you draft him with a lot of talent at the wide receiver position, at the running back position. So yes, it's a good thing. Do I think what they're doing right now is sustainable? Not really. Like I said, I think having 4 draft picks this year really hurts them. They've got to get their, the second first round pick. I think they have to nail both that and Caleb Williams. But good on them, right? Good on them for surrounding him with talent, because you look at the 2 wide receivers, DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, that's a top 10 wide receiver duo in the NFL. And that's not saying a whole lot, but still, those 2 wide receivers are you can be confident with a rookie quarterback. So I think the moves in a nutshell are good. I think Caleb Williams is set up for success this season, and we'll see about the future. But I think it'd be very smart of them to draft an offensive lineman with their 9th overall pick, get Caleb Williams, and you look at this offense, you're working with something. Yeah. So good for them.
And last thing before we jump into the Bengals talk, I want to talk about one of the more underrated moves in free agency. If you guys could do us a favor, we've got over 300 people, close to 400 people on the chat. We've only got 38 likes. If we can get this video up to 100 plus likes, we greatly appreciate your support and you guys spending all free agency frenzy with us. Hopefully you guys have liked the show and the coverage throughout the week. But let's talk about one of the more underrated moves of NFL free agency, and I'll tell you what it is: Hollywood Brown to the Chiefs. Hollywood Marquise Brown to the Chiefs, or Marquise Hollywood Brown to the Chiefs. How did we let this happen? To me, you gave Patrick Mahomes a speedster, a guy that has all the potential in the world. Went to Arizona thinking that he'd be paired up with his guy, Kyler Murray. Things didn't obviously work out with Kyler getting injured. Things didn't work out in Baltimore because Lamar Jackson doesn't like to throw the ball. And then you pair him up with one of arguably the league's best quarterback in Patrick Mahomes, and that Kansas City Chiefs offense, and with McCole Hardman. And man, let's just talk about it, man. I just think that this is dangerous. I think the Chiefs offense got more dangerous with Marquise Hollywood Brown. What were your thoughts on the Chiefs adding him? To me, I thought this was a perfect fit. This is a guy that can run a lot of routes in the route tree. He's a speedster. He's a speed demon. You're worried about him blowing the top off the defense regularly. Listen, I may feel how I feel about the Kansas City Chiefs, but I can recognize a good move. and Marquise Hollywood Brown was a plus fit for them. To me, that this was a home run, pick. I don't know. That's just my
Damn,
thoughts.
man, it's scary. It's looking scary, and the reason why I say that is Rashee Rice he carried that wide receiver room on his shoulders this past year. Rashee Rice was a dominant wide receiver for the Chiefs. Then they had Justin Watson. Their receiver room heading into the year, we were talking about it. It didn't look good early in the season. The Chiefs' offense was not looking good. Patrick Mahomes was struggling. We were seeing, growing pains with him and his other receivers. You saw him slamming his helmet down on the sideline in week 6. We saw a lot of issues with this Chiefs offense, but God damn it, Marquise Brown and Rashee Rice. We just talked about another wide receiver duo, but the biggest issue with the Chiefs, with what I saw this year, was the lack of a downfield passing game. In the playoffs, we saw it though, right? They went out and Marquez Valdez-Scantling, they had a lot, big time plays and big time moments against the Ravens, to seal the deal, deep ball. What's going to happen in the playoffs when you got Marquise Brown now and Rashee Rice coming into his own in his second, career season? It's looking scary. So for the Kansas City Chiefs, obviously they didn't make a whole lot of moves this offseason, but Chiefs fans, you can definitely tell, are riding high on their high horse, and they deserve to be so, because this offense, although there's not a superstar, that they have, Travis Kelce's getting older. Marquise Brown is going to add an element that they've been missing since they've had Tyreek Hill on their team. So good on the Chiefs, good on Andy Reid, and this is why they continue to stay great. So it's scary. Marquise Brown's going to make some big time plays for them.
Yeah, man. Let's keep it going to Bengals talk now.
Yep.
While you're here, guys, appreciate if you guys give this video a like and subscribe to the YouTube channel while you're here. This week has truly been fun. It's my favorite time of the year. It's my busiest week out of the year, obviously, with NFL free agency. And you guys have made it fun through the riddles, through the gifts, through the news breaks, the whole 9 yards, and doing these shows. I just want to say a special thanks to First Star Logistics, obviously. That's the family. I want to say thanks to Daniel, thanks to Marissa. They put up with a lot this week. A lot of being in front of the camera, a lot of lack of sleep, but I greatly appreciate the work that you guys put in. But let's keep it to the Bengals. A lot of Bengals fans are in panics right now, obviously, because the Bengals, DJ Reader's out the door. DJ Reader is now a Detroit Lion, and Bengals fans don't know how to, take that, if you will. Let's just discuss some stuff for a second. I think the Bengals may have made a mistake not giving DJ Reader a more, I guess, let's just say the offer he was looking to get. I think that DJ Reader was a big piece of the defensive line. However, dare I say, I understand why they didn't. I also understand why they didn't. It's about 2 blown quads. I will not be of the person that says, oh, he's injury prone, because I just think that this is minimizing everything that he brought to that team. When the guy played, and he played more off hurt, whatever the case may be, both of the times he got hurt, they were pretty big injuries. I just think that DJ Reader was an absolute clog in the middle of that Bengals defensive line, and how he's able to get the most out of the Bengals defensive line. He helped improve everybody that was around him. He helped improve BJ Hill. He helped improve Larry Ogunjobi. He helped improve Sam Hubbard, Ray Hendrickson. That's what that guy did. Mm-hmm. And I can assure you, just as sad as Bengals fans are sad to see him go, the AFC North is happy to see him leave, because he made life hell, for running backs and teams just trying to get off on the Bengals defense. And you figure, when the Bengals first signed DJ Reader, the Bengals had one of the worst run defenses in the league, one of the worst, and it reared its ugly head again when he got hurt. You saw how bad the defensive line could be, like how life could be without DJ Reader. Sure, he wasn't the best pass rusher, right? But what that guy brought to the table from a run standpoint, his ability to just hold the point of the attack, man, he made everybody around him better. And I think the Lions are getting an absolute beast with DJ Reader, man. They're getting a team player. They're getting a guy that is a leader among leaders, man, for real, for real. And I got to just say, it sucks for the Bengals, because no matter who you grab, whether it be via free agency, whether it be the draft, there's no replacing DJ Reader. I truly think he was one of the more underappreciated defensive players in the league. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy the guy got paid. But at the end of the day, if you're able to come to terms with Tyeler Tart, if you're able to come to terms with whoever you might draft, just know it's going to look a little different. It's going to look little different. It's going to have to be, you know how we say running back by committee? It's going to have to be a full-on effort. It's going to have to be a full-on effort. And Connor Elman, you said, is Reader going to be ready for week 1? That's a question everybody keeps asking. I have no idea. Nobody knows, right? I don't know. I know when he injured his quad before, he was able to come back pretty quickly. So I don't know if he'll be ready for week 1. I don't know if he's not going to be ready for week 1. Regardless, doesn't matter. What matters is he's no longer a Bengal, and he's now a Detroit Lion. And whatever it was, whether he'd be ready or not, the Detroit Lions felt good enough about it to sign him to the deal that they signed him to. So again, good on DJ Reader. Joe Wood says DJ peaked in playoffs in 21. Playoffs, love DJ, but quad tears. The timing of the injury is what killed him with Cincy. I agree. The timing was off, but I don't think he peaked with that. I mean, he was playing as good as you would want a nose tackle to play in the National Football League for most of his tenure here. When he was on the football field, you saw. I do think that what happened was you start seeing teams double team a little bit more. And that's a lot of that sort of went to the Bengals' inability to find a guy to spell the defense, spell him on defense after Larry Ogunjobi left. So he was playing a high number of snaps. Trey Hendrickson playing a high number of snaps. So ideally, you don't want to find yourself in that situation again. But I don't think that DJ Reader's play decreased. I just think that he was met with more difficulties, if you will, because he's playing such a high number of snaps, because you don't have that guy to spell him. They tried to spell him towards the end of the season. They tried to move people like Miles Murphy on the inside on certain pass rush plays. They tried to move Sam Hubbard around. They tried to do different things to try to make his life easier, but it just wasn't the same, obviously, because you don't have your true defensive tackle or nose tackle that could spell him. They tried it with Tupou. They tried all those things. So, it's one of those things where I don't think that DJ Reader, just his play fell off. I won't co-sign that. But Daniel, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, his play definitely did not fall off, and it is gonna be a different situation for the Bengals, right? You're losing a guy in DJ Reader who was a captain. You're losing a guy in DJ Reader who was a class act, a guy who always stepped up to the plate. And Tyeler Tart, not to disrespect him, but there is gonna be a clear difference with having that veteran presence in DJ Reader versus a guy. Let's say you do bring in Tyeler Tart. This is gonna be his first year. You can't expect him right away to step in and be this, amazing leader that DJ Reader was. So you're losing something off the field that really does matter. And on the field, we've got to see, what's going to happen. But I think you hit the nail on the head best. It's going to have to be a defensive line by committee. 1000%. That's what it's going to have to be, because DJ Reader, for as good as he even showed, he wasn't as productive last year. He wasn't as productive, the year before, because of how, thin the Bengals were at defensive line. And that's just the truth, right? You could rely on BJ Hill on the passing downs. He was fine in the run game, but that's not what BJ Hill is there for. With DJ Reader, he is there to be that run stopping defensive lineman. And that's why I'm curious to just see what the Bengals go out and do. We talked about it in the draft. There's a couple guys. We talked about Tavondre Sweat. There's, McKinley Jackson from Mississippi State, I believe. He's another, 330, 340-pound big defensive lineman that, you're looking at just to clog up the running game. And that's what, if I'm the Bengals, you got to go out and, secure the deal with Tart. Hopefully you can do that. But once again, something that's still even going under the radar is Sheldon Rankins. I feel like people aren't talking about the signing of Sheldon Rankins enough, right? It's kind of like Sheldon Rankins was signed, and then everybody's onto Reader or Tyeler Tart. Let's also talk about what Sheldon Rankins is bringing. Sheldon Rankins, what he's going to be able to switch on and off with BJ Hill is going to make them that much more productive. So that was one of the signings I truly believe still isn't being talked about enough. Sheldon Rankins is a guy I'm super excited for. I'm excited to go back and rewatch the film, throughout his last season, see how, where they played him. Obviously, it was a 3 tech, but Sheldon Rankins, BJ Hill, hopefully go out and get Tyeler Tart, and then we'll see if they go out. It would definitely be smart of the Bengals to go get a defensive lineman in the draft, not the pass rushing. Maybe you look at Jerzon Newton in round 1, but in round 2, round 3, there's going to be some guys like Tavondre Sweat that you can go out and definitely look for. So,
let me just touch on this a little bit more. The reason why I would be happy with the Tyeler Tart signing is because I feel like, we use the term nose tackle or 3 tech or 5 tech or, all these different techs, if you will. Even got 4 tech, which, obviously the Bengals don't really have because they don't play that type of defensive alignment, if you will. But we use those terms a lot. The reason why I like a guy like Tyeler Tart, because I feel like Tyeler Tart is your true defensive tackle. What I mean by that is he doesn't have a specialized tag on him, whether it be nose tackle or 3 tech, because the guy truly is good at stopping the run and he has the pass rushing upside. So I do think that with that being said, you could probably get a little bit more out of him in the pass rush department. You might be, well, not might be, you're definitely losing something in the run game department because he's not a quote unquote run specialist, run stopping specialist, but he is good at stopping the run. He is good at rushing the passer. And I think that's important to remember when we're discussing that. I feel like a lot of it, some of it might be a little bit overblown to some degree.
Yeah.
I think the Sheldon Rankins move was great. I think it's going to be great for BJ Hill. I think it's going to be great for the pass rush department, and you need more about that. So, honest fan, you're right. Facts. Tyeler Tart start as all around solid. If he's motivated, he's a good player. Yeah.
And let me just talk about that really quickly because I see a lot of people, question his character. Once again, I've never talked to Tyeler Tart. I've never had a conversation, but let's get, the facts straight about Tyeler Tart.
This is, by the way, coming because someone on Twitter reached out to nobody in the comment section knows anything about his motivation. What happened was somebody asked somebody who covers the Titans, what are your thoughts on Tyeler Tart? And he spoke about how good of a player he is if he is motivated. That's where that whole notion comes from.
And it's also because what happened with the Tennessee Titans? Yes, he was released. And yes, he was released because of his effort. Yes, he was released because of his attitude. But you also got to look at what was the reason, right? Yes, he also got in a scuffle before, in preseason, but he was having contract disputes. He wanted to be a starting defensive lineman. And that's why, that was a huge part of the issue. He was going back and forth with Mike Vrabel. He was going back and forth with the team just because he wasn't truly happy with where he was, with his contract, but that never, lined up to the play. So the play with him at the Titans, he was good with the Titans. They released him. And why do you think teams immediately went out to the waiver and put out a claim for them? I believe also the Bengals.
The Bengals are one of them, yeah.
So it's yes, he had some issues with the Titans, but those issues didn't flare up with the Texans. And once again, I think he's going to get this contract. And, once he gets the contract, that was his biggest issue because the dude was an undrafted free agent. Right? If you're an undrafted free agent and you're playing like a starting defensive lineman, you are a starting defensive lineman. The film he was putting up was great. You have a right to, to feel like you deserve more money than what you were getting as an undrafted free agent. So I don't know if those issues will, rear their ugly heads at his new team. So,
let's get to some of the questions in the comment section. I love what my guy Matthew Heitzman, and I appreciate you, Matt. You're always in the comment section. He says, I think Gesicki isn't being talked about enough. Not a lot of fans understand what having him and Tanner Hudson does for our passing game. Oh, let me take you to school. Let me be that guy to tell you what Mike Gesicki brings. I've been watching this guy since he was in high school. Mike Gesicki is a game changer. He is a big slot wide receiver. But he is your traditional tight end. He is the guy that we hate covering, meaning Bengals hate covering, right? The Bengals don't like those tight ends in which they don't know if they can match a linebacker, cornerback, safety up to them. Mike Gesicki is going to be a game changer for the Bengals on offense. He instantly comes to this team, with all due respect, he instantly comes to this team with the best hands, the second best hands on this team behind Jamar Chase, I believe. And probably could even give Jamar Chase a run for his money, if I'm being honest with you, with hands. Mike Gesicki is that good. He is sure-handed. He is going to, yes, Joe Wood, 100%. He is going to shine in this Bengals offense. It's the reason why I was so adamant, dating back to last year, that the Bengals need to go out for him, because this is a guy that produced no matter who his quarterback was. If you ever saw a snap count down low, it was never because he wasn't a good player. It was never because he just shrinked or he had a bunch of drops. It was none of that. It was because sometimes he wasn't played with the Patriots. It was really just that simple. He was not played with the Patriots, but now he's going to play with the Bengals. And guess what? I expect Joe Burrow's touchdowns to go up massively with a guy like Mike Gesicki, a guy that could just pluck the ball out of the air. Tight end 100%, Matt Heitzman, is an misunderstood position in Cincy. Joe Burrow loves his tight end. And I think a lot of people come out there and they say, They a lot of people go out there and they say, "Oh, the Bengals don't use tight ends," which couldn't be further from the truth. But Mike Gesicki is such a different type of tight end. Hayden Hurst was a fine tight end, right?
Yes.
CJ Uzomah was a fine tight end. But to me, you're getting a true receiving threat, a guy that steps into this offense and makes this team better, man. Man, I think I agree with you guys. Just Deuce says Mike has had Fitzpatrick, Tua, Mac Jones throw him the ball. Now he has Burrow. Mike going to thrive in Cincy. Mike thrived with Ryan Tannehill as his quarterback. Oh, yeah. So my dad is a huge Dolphins fan, and I watched a lot of Dolphins games with him, man. And I'll tell you right now, man, I saw what that guy could do. And you can say hypotheticals all you want. That's the offseason. The offseason is full of hypotheticals. So, I mean, if anybody does have the answers, I guess they're a sorcerer or a fortune teller. No need to be a jackass in the comment section. But what I'll say is,
I think he was looking at his other question, but
anyway, regardless, doesn't matter. What Mike Gesicki can do for this offense is going to show itself starting week 1. I believe that. Daniel, what are your thoughts?
1000%. You hit the nail on the head. When you look at his stats, the stats aren't going to tell you the full question. Go look at, I'm sure most of you guys saw his presser with the Bengals. The dude listed, I believe, 10 to 15 quarterbacks that he's played with the past multiple years. And if you have to list all the quarterbacks that you played with in your career and you can't, count them on 2 hands, there's probably a reoccurrence there, right? You look at with the Dolphins, right? He played with multiple quarterbacks. It wasn't just 2. It was so, I think there was, the rookie Skylar Thompson, so many quarterbacks. Bailey Zappi, he was, catching passes from last year. There is something to be said when your quarterback, room isn't consistent. I promise you, he is going to get that with Joe Burrow. So just look at how the Bengals used their tight ends last year. You saw seam passes to Drew Sample. You saw Tanner Hudson having multiple games with 5, 6, 7 targets. There was a game we were sitting in the first our sweep, Malik, and there was a game Tanner Hudson got, 5 of the first 8 targets. That could happen with Mike Gesicki. And Mike Gesicki is truly going to be a big play threat at the tight end position. So,
I want to touch on something real quick. My bad. What's my man's name in the comment section? Jacqueline, I think it is, right?
Jacqueline Hyde.
My bad, man. I thought you were saying all the hypotheticals. Guys, there is no update on Tyeler Tart yet. As far as I know, still in Cincinnati. Hold your horses. When there is news, you'll know as soon as I know. But there's no need to freak out. There's no need to freak out about the situation. He's either going to sign with the Bengals or he's not. Let's start there. But I want to answer Black Panther F-150. You want me to talk about the offensive line? Guess what? So does everybody else, right? We've been talking about the offensive line at a alarming rate. Here's what I'll say, man. What you're saying? I saw you make a couple of comments. You said you want the Bengals to get new offensive linemen in there. Listen, Orlando Brown starting left tackle, your left guard starting Cordell Volson. You got your center, that is Ted Karras, your right guard Alex Kappa. The right tackle spot is the big question mark, right? They are looking to add a right tackle in free agency, my man. But if you look across the entire league, man, like there is not one team. Probably the Eagles are probably the closest team to having all 5 starters figured out. And I thankfully think offensive tackle at 18 is 100% in play. 100% in play. I just think that we need to hold our horses a little bit on that. Listen, the idea behind free agency is you want to try to go into free agency or exit free agency with as many questions about the roster as possible. So that way the draft does open up for you, man. But I think that you got to be fair to the Bengals as well, man. I think that the Bengals are doing a good enough job of trying to address the issues on their football team. There is no replacing DJ Reader. We understand that. Whoever you get at the tackle spot does not stop you from drafting a tackle at 18 or whoever you plan to draft a tackle in the draft. Does not stop you from doing that, but it does add to the room. And ideally, you'd hope to get a guy in there that you feel comfortable about that person being a starter if you aren't able to get said tackle at 18. Because if you're telling yourself you're not going to move up at 18, then guess what? you got to be able to leave the draft with something in the draft. I mean, I'm not the draft, free agency with something. The draft is a crapshoot. You never know who's going to end up where. I think the conversation has gone off the rails. I think people are being a little too unfair to Cordell Volson. I think we have to understand that the right tackle spot is still a spot that you need to fix, and that's all right. That's all right. That's okay. And K. Jenkins says, let's trade T for a tackle. Okay. If you trade T for a tackle, who is your number 2 wide receiver? So we're going to create more holes on the roster. Listen, I'm okay with trading T if it makes sense, but I'm not trading T for a tackle. I'm trading T for draft capital, if anything.
Yep.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
You want to make sure we got to keep things within the realm of reality. You don't want to create a gigantic hole, just to fill one hole, if you will. I think that the trading T thing, like we talked about, is something that I personally would do if I was in the front office, but I would be looking to acquire future picks this year. That's what I'd be trying to do. So that way I can add talent to the football team. But I think that the conversation has just grown off a little off the rails a little bit with Cordell Volson and with some of the pieces on the offensive line. The offensive line is definitely a spot, and the Bengals are in a good spot to be able to grab a guy at the right tackle spot. They are, if they choose to do so. But I also don't think adding a Mekhi Becton or adding whoever at the right tackle spot is necessarily bad either.
Yeah. So, I mean, once again, we appreciate you guys. We got a lot of good questions here, a lot of good conversations. So, like Taylor said, I'm not sure, Volson is the answer at guard. Let me just say this, right? Look at the Bengals last year. The Bengals had many games where their offensive line looked damn good. Point to the 49ers game. 49ers game was one of the best rushing games that I've seen from the Cincinnati Bengals with what Joe Mixon was able to do to that 49ers. And that wasn't all because of the offensive line. I understand that. But look at the games that the Bengals were able to put forth last year. Chase Brown had multiple games where he had, big time rushes in between the tackles. Joe Mixon had multiple games where he had some big time open lanes. This offensive line is not terrible. You can't get a perfect offensive line. So, the offensive line as it stands right now, yes, the right tackle is the major hole. But besides that, you're heading into this season at least confident because they've had a year, to build that repertoire with one another. Yeah, Michael Wilhelm said if they sign Becton, I hope that they won't be too comfortable passing on the tackle. I doubt that in their eyes, if they sign Mekhi Becton, they're viewing him as the de facto franchise offensive tackle. They'll probably sign him to a 1 to 2 year deal, and that doesn't mean he is penciled in as the franchise tackle. So they're definitely going to continue to look, especially in the draft, you just look best talent available. Blake Flynn said Yoshi as the wide receiver too. Yoshi Voss and Charlie Jones will have their chance to really develop this year, and we'll see. Mike Wilhelm said Trent Irwin. Yes, very, very happy for Trent Irwin, right? 1 year deal, $2 million. Good depth piece. Trent Irwin has a good connection with Joe Burrow. He's shown that he can step up in a pinch. He's good depth for the Bengals at the wide receiver position. Rick Clark said with Karras, Carman, Hill, and Dante all up after this year, you think we draft 3 to 4 offensive linemen? I wouldn't necessarily predict how many offensive linemen, but it would be very smart of the Bengals to look at that interior offensive lineman, especially in this class. We've talked about it before, Malik. There is some damn good talent at the center position, at the interior offensive line. You can get in round 3 or round 4. So if I'm the Bengals, yes, I'm leaving the draft with a premier offensive tackle in round 1 or round 2, and I'm getting some depth for sure. Because it never hurts to get you depth on the offensive line, whether that's free agency or in the NFL draft. Brian R. said, does Jackson Carman have anything to offer at this point, Malik? He looked okay in the playoff game against the Bills, but that's about it.
I'll never, you talking about Jackson Carman? I'll never say a player is done. Just, we don't know. We don't know. I mean, I don't know if he shows any, I don't know if it's in Cincinnati. I don't know if it's going to work out in Cincinnati. I don't know why. You know how I felt about the pick when the Bengals first drafted him. I think sometimes you get bad advice and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I think that Jackson Carman is what he is in Cincinnati, and I don't really see it improving beyond that.
Mm-hmm. Completely. We got J.R. Garrison said play calling and scheme helped mask deficiencies. The coaching staff has to help there. That's the name of the game. With the offensive line, you have to look at what the Texans did last year with their terrible, their bottom 5, bottom 10 offensive line. They made it look like a top 10 offensive line because you have the tight end to help chip. Your passing game helps your running game, and also your rushing game helps your passing game. So a lot of offensive line has to do with how you scheme things up. And I'm confident with the way the roster's shaping up that, and especially with how the Bengals rushing game looked at the end of last year, I'm confident we're going to see, a more improved rushing game with Chase Brown, with Zach Moss, and hopefully you see a running back in the draft. Oscar Sanchez said most underrated wide receiver in this year's draft. There's a lot. Obviously, Malik's been on his guy, Jermaine Burton from Alabama. Probably going to be a round 2, round 3 selection. He can play on the outside. He can play in the slot. Sure hands. There's a lot of guys. I personally like some of the guys, going in round 2 or round 3. I'm a huge fan of Jalen McMillan. I've been, on record saying this about, the Washington wide receivers. If I'm the Bengals, I'm looking at a wide receiver that's of, the bigger mold of a guy who's good hands, can play the outside, can play the inside. I want versatility. And a guy like Jalen McMillan is, I believe 6 foot. He's a smooth, silky route runner. I kind of compare him. He's like a Jacoby Myers. And that's what I would want, because you got a guy like Charlie Jones, who you could hopefully be a slot guy who's speedy, good hands. You got Andre Yoshibas, who's going to play on the outside. But I want a game changer. I want a guy who I can put in and be confident that he's going to make big time plays, can have elite, after the catch ability, and it's got good hands, because that's the number one thing I want in a wide receiver personally. I want a guy with good hands. We got Tim Spar said Jacob Cowing. Jacob Cowing from Arizona is an elite after the catch guy. You would draft him to be a slot wide receiver. He's smaller, he's undersized, but yes, Jacob Cowing in day 3, 1000% can be an option. That's where, if you're the Bengals, you're going to have your ability to get guys in the draft at the wide receiver position to definitely, build up that room. You got Trent Irwin now, you got Jones, you got Yoshi, you got Jamar, you got T. There's not a huge need for wide receivers, but yes, I would definitely go out and draft a wide receiver. Daniel Panetti said, is there anything on Tart and Becton? We've already been over that. No news so far. I guess my question to you, Malik, would be, what would be next for the Bengals, in free agency besides, let's say, Tart and Becton, or are you happy with their free agency so far?
I'm overall happy with their free agency. I think you want to add a corner at some point, get another veteran presence in there, and then you just want to fill the roster out. I told you guys, if I were the Bengals, I would still show interest in Dalton Risner to add to the offensive line. I think the more offensive linemen you got, but I think you're entering that point in which you want to get more bargain bin deals in there. But you also can go out there and start to add some of your guys back, right? Like I would like to see Max Sharpen be re-signed back to Cincinnati. I think that would make sense. And I think the Bengals started to do some of that today with guys like Trent Irwin. Seeing what those guys' market might look like. But yeah, all in all, I think you got to be happy with what they've done.
Yeah, and we still got some more questions, so we appreciate you guys, dropping them down. Someone said Christian Fulton, Tre'Davious White. There's a lot of good corners on the market, Malik. There's a lot of good ones. So the Bengals, they're gonna have their pick if they want, veteran cornerback. You said what? Pick of the litter? Yeah, completely. So we got Matthew Heitzman. He said, why do people keep comparing Xavier Worthy to John Ross? Worthy is more productive coming out, is he not? Let me also say this. John Ross was not a terrible college wide receiver. He wasn't. John Ross was a very productive college wide receiver. He put out a lot of good film. Xavier Worthy, though, at the same time, people can compare him just because of what he ran at the 40. And it's going to be a lazy comparison just because of the hype that he's garnered, because of how fast he is. Their games are, I wouldn't really say similar. I think Xavier Worthy, what he showed, Xavier Worthy is a smaller wide receiver, far smaller than John Ross was. He is speed. And if that's what the Bengals want to draft, I don't know if I would draft him in round 2. I think Xavier, there's far better wide receivers you can get later in the draft, better wide receivers you can get at that point, and just overall better talent than adding a speedster like Xavier Worthy. I don't know if I would spend a first or second round pick on him. Scott Bryant said they need to add a backup at center. Yes, the Bengals in the draft, you're gonna have your chance to go out and get a lot of depth in the draft. Royal Flush Terry said an underrated loss was special team specialist Stanley Morgan to the Saints. Stanley Morgan was very good on special teams. He was a long-time Bengal, I believe, for 5 years. And, he was a favorite here of some fans. And, our co-host on Say the Jungle, Logan, loves Stanley Morgan. And he was very good in special teams. So, yes, it was definitely a loss, but the Bengals, I'm sure, are confident in what they can do with their special teams and what they can do with, some of the other guys. And you can get some special team specialists in the draft as well. A lot of people are just talking about wide receivers coming out of the draft. A.D. Mitchell. Yes, A.D. Mitchell is very good, but he's going to be a first round, early second round talent. Brian Thomas Jr., yes, he is very talented, but if I'm the Bengals, am I taking a wide receiver in round 1? If it's not one of the top 3, I'm not, just because there's so much talent at wide receiver, Malik, nowadays at the NFL level. Do we know why if the front office has started to negotiate with Money Mac, Evan McPherson, on an extension?
No,
yet?
I have no update on that. But I imagine that's going to happen soon. But yeah.
Yeah, and I don't have any doubt of that. You look at all these other teams, signing their kickers. You got Jake Bailey. You got so many other teams signing their kickers. I've really struggled to see Evan McPherson not being here. He'll be a Cincinnati Bengal. And it's also an underrated part of the Bengals, having good special teams. So I'm curious to see, if they were to bring in competition for Brad Robbins, but having a kicker like Evan McPherson, I promise you guys, is something we're gonna be talking about in playoffs when he makes, big time kicks.
Yeah, you want to keep that guy, especially when knowing the kicker's position spot was such a interesting thing for so long for the Bengals, right? They had so many. If you had Mike Nugent, you had Randy Bullock, you drafted the kid Jake Elliott. He didn't work out. Went to the Eagles, won a Super Bowl. So like you don't want to put you don't want to unnecessarily create a hole if you don't need to, especially knowing you have all those questions at punter.
Yeah, we got talking about the backup wide receivers. Matthew Heitzman said one name to look out for is Cedric Jackson. I think under Troy Walters, he could be sneaky good.
I love Cedric Jackson. You guys heard me talk about him on Save the Jungle a lot. He's a guy that I was very, very high on. I was very happy when they were able to land him. He obviously, in a crowded wide receiver room, wasn't able to really stick out. But yeah, I mean, he'd have to fight for playtime. That's for sure.
Yes,
he'd have to fight for playtime. But speed is something you can't teach, and definitely, Lord knows the Bengals need a lot more of it. He did find himself active on a couple of game days, so that was good for him.
I think he played. I believe it was one of Jake Browning's first games, and I think he drew a passing interference call. So the speed definitely is something Bengals need. J.R. Garrison said, "You guys are awesome, LOL. I personally feel like the pick is going to be Jackson Powers Johnson. There's a lot of talent, and I'm
a long time, long time to go before then.
So we got a month left. We got some people asking. Balance Bike Life said, "Is our O-line problems possibly because of our lack of a run game?"
Yes, 100%. I mean, it definitely plays a role, but I also think that the play calling has to take the onus on themselves as well. You have to allow offensive linemen to get into a game. Like you can't. I mean, you can literally just point to Jake Browning's first start where they ran the ball 8 times the entire game for a guy's first start. That's just abysmal. You can't do that. You have to allow offensive linemen to get into a game. Once you get into a game, you can marry it together with the pass game, and everything should flow freely. But you have to allow these guys to get into a game. If you don't, it's going to struggle. So, yeah, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, and that's where, once again, looking to the draft in the future, we'll talk about running backs, and the Bengals should be primed for adding a running back right beside a guy like Chase Brown.
Yep.
J.R. Garrison said, "Who's out if the Bengals select Verse or another defensive end?"
Who's
He's basically saying, look at the Bengals defensive end room. If they go out and select the guy in round 1, who would be the piece that would be gone for the Bengals?
I mean, my guy would be vastly different from the Bengals guy. I mean, I've seen enough of Joseph Asai to know to feel like I know enough of what he is. But he could shock me this year. He could have a breakout year, 6 sacks. That'd be huge. That'd be good for him, and probably make himself some money. And after he becomes a free agent.
Yeah. And we got some questions. Looking at the punter, Dan Carousel said, "Whatever happened to Ariza? He signed with the Chiefs. And he's their new punter as they lost Tommy Townsend and He's the new punter. Brian R said, I've seen people say that we're not consulting with Frank Pollack on the guys who have been drafted or signed. There's no way that's true, right?
No, you're consulting with your offensive line coach.
Yeah, definitely important. I mean, especially look at Mekhi Becton is probably one of the reasons
Mekhi
why.
Becton doesn't take his first visit with Cincinnati if it wasn't for the Frank Pollack connection.
Yeah. And we got Anthony Wilson said, Twitter speaks so highly of Duke cooking, but I feel like he rarely is pressed for more accountability by the media. Moves like getting Ivan Pace with the seventh pick, inexcusable. I'm not quite sure what he's asking, but Duke Tobin, I will just say this. I think Duke Tobin has done a very good job of free agency so far. I think Duke Tobin has done a good job of, not going out and overspending. That's how you continue to stay in the mix as a contender. You don't go out and overspend like these other teams. We've seen it time and time again. Teams like the Jaguars, teams like the Titans, teams like, the Bears in the past, teams like the Vikings in the past go out and overspend. So personally, I feel like Duke Tobin, the moves that he's made, the safety position, Vonn Bell, Geno Stone, I think the moves he made is honestly, I think they've been pretty good. Malik, what are your thoughts on Duke Tobin so far?
I think he's done a fine job for the most part. You can't get everything perfect, especially because once you get to this point, when you let one of your guys get to free agency, it becomes a crapshoot at that point because teams are going to throw crazy dollars at them or money that they probably, could be life-changing money to them. I don't know necessarily what people wanted Duke Tobin to do that he hasn't done, that we probably wouldn't be talking about day 5 of free agency, looking at as reckless. So I'm not of the belief that he's done anything. I think that the big thing for me was following through on what I was told, right? Adding a right tackle is still something that they need to do, right? Adding a defensive tackle is still something they need to do. They addressed the tight end position like I told you guys that they would. They've done everything that they were supposed to do so far. Were the names the names you guys wanted? Who knows? But they did what they were supposed to do, man. They did what they were supposed to do. They've addressed it. It may not be the way everybody sees it, but they've done it, I think.
Yeah.
And I think I think we can't complain about that because there was a point in time years prior during the Marvin Lewis area in which they were just sitting on their hands and they would just sit on the roster that they had. And I think you could appreciate the roster that they have built and realizing that they also believe in the potential of some of their guys that they have drafted. I don't think that I don't think that Duke Tobin and the Bengals did anything to hang your hat on personally, outside of losing DJ Reader.
Yeah, and I'm of the same belief. I think Duke Tobin, we're gonna see it. You always tend to see it in the later portions of the season when the teams really, injuries start to happen. You really got to see the depth, and that goes into our next question. Royal Flush Terry said, "Where do you rank the Bengals safety room within the AFC North?" Let me just say this. There's going to be two different types of rankings, right? Who has the best total talent at the top of their position and who has the best depth. You can look at the Ravens and say, yes, probably their two starters are the two best safeties. You got Kyle Hamilton, who's a top 5 safety, I believe, at the NFL level. And you got Marcus Williams. Okay. But besides that, their depth isn't very good. You got a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers, same thing. You got your star and Minkah Fitzpatrick. But besides that, they don't have a whole lot of depth. And then you look at a team like the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland Browns, they lost a couple of their guys. And now you got, Juan Thornhill. You got Grant Delpit, who's really been super inconsistent at the NFL level. If I were to rank it, I think the Bengals safety room as a whole, it could be the best room in the entire AFC North. And that's just because of the depth that they have. You got Vonn Bell, you have Jordan Battle at the strong safety position. You got Geno Stone, you still have Dax Hill. It may not have the ceiling of a safety room like the Baltimore Ravens. It may not have a ceiling like, a superstar or a star like a Minkah Fitzpatrick, but I'm very confident that Lou and these safeties, I think they'll perform like the best safeties in the entire AFC North. What's thoughts on the Bengals safeties real quick?
I like them. I mean, we just talked about them at an alarming rate. I love the moves that they make. I think the Vonn Bell was the perfect cap off. It fixes all the issues that I talked about that they had from the communication, the veteran leadership, the veteran presence. He clears it all, and I think Vonn Bell's gonna have a bigger role in the Bengals defense that people are talking about. But I also think Jordan Battle is as well. So
yeah, I'm excited for Jordan Battle. I think Jordan Battle is gonna be. he's kind of the X factor when I look at this safety room. I don't think, Dax Hill is really. I think Dax Hill definitely has the potential to be, but I really think Jordan Battle, with just how it's lining up, I think he's going to be the X factor because we can see him take a major step forward. We've seen it, time and time again with other safeties at the NFL level. The Lions had a couple young safeties last year really start to step up. So we'll see. We'll see where it takes Jordan Battle. We got a question about could the Bengals actually afford a guy like Justin Jefferson? I mean, once again, we're talking fairyland. We're talking, a land of potential and future. I think, yes, in the NFL level, you can make anything happen. I truly believe that. We've seen Cap, with the New Orleans Saints, for example, the cap has been a mystery. They've time and time again overspent, and somehow start the season right below the cap. If the Bengals wanted to, I truly think they can make it happen. But you got to look at it this season, right? How are they going about free agency? They're going about it very smart, not overspending for a bunch of guys. You can say Sheldon Rankins sure got a lot more than maybe people were expecting, but there was no move that's going to be detrimental to them within 3, within 4, within 5 years. Keith Hellebrand said, when do the War Room draft episodes start? I love those. Those are absolutely fire. I believe in the next, before the draft, next couple weeks, we're going to be starting to really tune these up. So I'm excited for them.
Yeah. And if you guys could do us a huge favor, we got about 300 people on the chat. If you guys can give this video a like and subscribe to the YouTube channel while you're here, guys, because our coverage, even though free agency frenzy is ending, our coverage of the Bengals, of any signing that happens of the NFL, does not stop. Again, we'll have content all throughout the week, leading up to the draft and even after the draft. So make sure you guys keep it plugged with us because hopefully, we become your one-stop shop for all your NFL coverage and Bengals coverage and so on and so forth as well. So,
yeah, Royal Flush Terry said, do the Bengals still get a tight end in the draft? We still have 1 to 2 year contracts with these guys and no long-term tight end. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I think I think they could, but
that's not a priority. It's just not a priority right now, right, guys? They added Mike Gesicki. They brought back Tanner Hudson. They brought back Drew Sample. So,
And I'm with you. And personally, I understand people do want to look at the tight ends, right? You can look at the Ben Sinnott. You can look at, the Sanders from Texas. At the end of the day, I look at this tight end room. First off, you go out and draft a guy in round 3, you're going to feel pressured to play the tight end. When you have a guy like Hudson, you have Sample, you have Gesicki. If you draft a guy in round 4, you're going to feel like you should be playing these guys. And personally, I'm confident in Hudson. I'm confident in Gesicki. I'm confident in Sample. So if it was me personally, I wouldn't make it an effort in round 3 or even round 4. There's a lot of talent. I'd rather take a running back in round 4 than a tight end. So if you want to sprinkle on one, maybe round 5. But personally, I just don't love this class. And if you're drafting a tight end, you're drafting one to hopefully be your franchise, your future starter. And I just don't really see the Bengals doing that. Jeremiah Phillips said, do you think Gesicki will be a stopgap tight end? If he's solid, will they give him a deal like Schultz or France next season?
I think that if Gesicki, I think guys, I think it's matching up perfectly. They want to win a Super Bowl this year, right? So you bring in Mike Gesicki to fill the tight end role and share up that spot. You still have Higgins on the roster who they want to make sure he's on the roster for this upcoming season. You have Jamar Chase. You have the depth at the wide receiver spot. So then what happens is when after next year, ideally, let's play a perfect scenario. The Bengals win a Super Bowl, right? All right.
Yep.
T. Higgins leaves. Well, if Mike Gesicki has a good year where he's able to produce as a receiving threat, and let's say he has one of the better years of his career. Well, if T. Higgins was to leave, you kind of get some of those snaps, replace some of those snaps with Mike Gesicki long term. And ideally, this is a guy that's floated around now, right? He went from the Dolphins long term. He was there, had great seasons with them, went to the Patriots, was barely utilized. And then guess what? You come to Cincinnati, you have a great season, hypothetically speaking. Why would you leave? Why would you want to leave? And they don't hate 30-year-olds too. I saw that comment. That's a false narrative. When Joe Burrow turns 30, they're going to pay him. When Jamar Chase turns 30, he'll still be a Bengal. It's not. That is a false narrative. It's just that the players that have turned 30, were they worthy of the contract set extension? Or were there injury concerns? Were there problems Were there things that came up to make them be like, hey, I don't want to sign said player? Anyway.
Yeah, we got some questions here. Sam Patterson said, any chance they actually use all 10 of the picks, or will they go up and trade to get their guy? Seems like there's not many holes. At least 10 spots can be filled. I mean, that's how I would look at it too. Like maybe not round one, but I would be looking 1000%. I think, and this is just, from what I've seen in the NFL draft, day 2 and day 3 are the most important days. Yes, you've got to hit on your round one, but you got one pick. There's not much you can really do besides banking on one specific player. You have so much, in your control in round 2, round 3. So if it were me, I'm looking at, now I've got 2 third-round picks. I'm looking at the fact that I've got multiple, 6th-round picks. I'm moving up. I'm moving up in round 4, round 3 to go out and get my guy.
And to answer your statement, Andrew Whitworth was definitely worthy of the contract extension. I agree with you, but the Bengals shot themselves in the foot because of, they drafted Cedric Jackson earlier on and Jake Fisher, and they thought that they had figured out the spot. So they realized, afterwards, oh, we shot ourselves in the foot. Andrew Whitworth is still playing at a elite level. We have this young left tackle. You can't let him rot. So you can't, you got to be able to see what you have in him. They wanted to see what they had in Cedric Boye and Jake Fisher. I'm certainly sure that that's a move that they probably kicked themselves about because they could have had that spot figured out for years. And who knows, it could have looked a lot differently, but I don't know.
Yeah, we got a question from a little while ago. Somebody asked about how Mike Vrabel is, what's the fit like with the Browns? I think first off, Mike Vrabel being not a head coach and being just in a room, I think that's going to do wonders for the Browns. I think the Browns defense was absurd last year, and Mike Vrabel being added to their coaching staff is a huge get. It is. And the way I look at the Browns, I think the Browns still are going to have the same problems that they had last year, right? You went out. Yes, you lost to Deshaun Watson, and yes, Joe Flacco was your quarterback. You still lost to Houston Texans in the playoffs. So if I'm the Browns, yes, I'm doing all that I can to better my team. Vrabel, yes, 1000% makes them a better football team. I still see concerns on their offense. And at the end of the day, it's going to come down to how Deshaun Watson and their offense looks. We got a question from Evan Shuck. He said, given free agency so far, who is the pick at 18? It's still too early to tell. If I were to, put some money on something, and if there's 2 of the top 6 offensive tackles there, I think that they would go offensive tackle. But it depends, because I think we could see a run on offensive tackle. So given free agency so far, I think that shores up as the best spot to fix both a need and a talent. Matthew Heitzman said, any update on Tyler Boyd anywhere?
As far as I heard, Pittsburgh is interested in him, which is the worst kept secret in NFL free agency. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the smart move. Go with Pittsburgh and
Russell Wilson.
And
let's weld.
He would be, he's the wide receiver too. And if I'm Tyler Boyd, I'm looking at that and saying, all right, he can still be a starting wide receiver on an NFL team. And if he's with the Steelers, it fixes 2 things at once.
All right. Well, guys, we appreciate you so much for tuning in to another episode of Free Agency Frenzy. As signings happen, we'll still be going live even through the weekend just to make sure you guys are up to date with what's happening and giving our thoughts, our analysis throughout the whole 9 yards. And Tyrone Thomas says, hey, Malik, I'm kind of worried Rankins hasn't signed his deal yet. Any update? As far as I know, he's signing Cincinnati. We don't know where these guys are when they get announced that they're signing deals and stuff like that. They could be on vacation. I wouldn't stress too much about that unless you hear otherwise. But guys, we appreciate you so much for tuning in. And somebody said, Malcolm Williams says, hopefully a live stream later. Yeah, if there is, I'll definitely be live. And I would have traded Sam Hubbard and re-signed DJ. Sam Hubbard's not being traded. Also bad PR. He's from Cincinnati, right? I don't think that happens. But thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of the Free Agency Frenzy presented by First Star Logistics. We appreciate you guys. Make sure you guys give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live. I'm going to get some sleep, but until next time, which could be later on this evening.